this is the Provoked Prawn, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how to use Corsair's LC100 case accent lighting panels to add some extra RGB lighting to your case in interesting ways. This is an unboxing and installation video of the starter LC100 kit and the expansion kit, as well as the installation process for using them. Now, these are essentially small little lighting triangles. There's 9 included in the starter pack, and there's 9 LEDs per triangle, meaning they're surprisingly bright. More on that a bit later on. Now, I have 2 packs kindly sent over by Corsair, the starter kit and the expansion kit. You can have up to a maximum of 18 of these triangles connected together, and there are some complexities to the installation that requires both SATA power and an RGB header connection as well. And in this video I'm going to be showing the installation process in the Corsair 5000T, a case that I've previously done a couple of videos on, including an in-depth build guide. So if you've got that case or something similar and want to know how to install the LC100s and the process for doing so, then stick with me as I go through this process. It is fairly straightforward, and they are very nicely designed. They include in the box the 9 panels, a USB cable, a lighting node which has 2 RGB ports on it, and an RGB extension lead. There are a couple of points of interest here. One of the things that you'll notice, for example, is that both that node and the main powered triangle have a SATA connection on them, so they both require power. So an interesting point here is if you have the LC100 starter kit and the expansion kit, you actually need 3 SATA power connections at a minimum, which is quite a bit of extra cabling to go into your case, so it's something to bear in mind before you even purchase. Now, the triangles hold up to 9 LEDs, as said, and they also are ever so slightly magnetic, both on the rear and along the sides. You'll notice that there are pins along 2 sides of each triangle that can connect together using these little metal adapters that are included in the box. Ever so slightly magnetic, and those are actually in 2 sizes, which is an important point for noting later on. There's also a USB cable that plugs into the lighting node that then connects into your motherboard USB header, and there's an RGB extension cable. Another point here is that the RGB on these triangles is a 3-pin connection, so you can use the lighting node that's included with it, or if you have a Corsair Commander Pro or the Commander Core XT, you will find there's RGB connections on those that you can use in place. But you can't use any of the spare RGB fan headers, as they're 4-pin, so those won't work if you have them available on the Commander Core or Commander Pro. I'll show you that a bit later on, but as I said, this control box that's included as standard has 2 RGB connections on it. You only need 1, even if you're using 18 lighting panels, so that's worth bearing in mind that you'll have a spare one for fans, for example, or maybe for some light strips, or just don't bother using it. So you'll notice that one of the triangles already has cables coming out of it. This is the main power box, and obviously the control that you'll need. And you have 2 cables coming out of that, one for the SATA power and one for the RGB connection to the little control box. You also have some sticky double-sided tape included in the box that you can obviously use to put that lighting node on the back of your PC or find a suitable mounting point for it. I'll show you where I put mine in a minute. The RGB connection then connects to the lighting node, and the setup for that is then connected to your motherboard using this USB cable, which you'll plug in here. There is a complexity here if you already have multiple USB connections in your PC, and I'm going to show you a workaround for that. And as well, I'm also going to be including links in the description to things that you might find useful, so stick with me as I go through, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. If you use Google Lens, you can scan the QR code on the packaging to access the main page about it and then download the manual. Obviously you can get this straight from the website on your PC or on a tablet or smartphone, whatever, if that's the easiest way, but there is a QR code that you can scan and you can easily get access to the quick start guide, because there is no documentation included in the box. If you scroll through the installation setup process, you will notice a few little things of interest, one of which is, as I said, that these panels can also be used and connected up to Commander Core or Commander Pro if you happen to have one of those already installed in your system. Also notes that if you happen to have the starter kit and the expansion kit, you need to make sure that both are powered and that they're logically placed within the system. You need to make sure that power's going through in a logical way and they're placed in the right position so that all the panels are getting lighting, which is fairly straightforward. So you can see on the Commander Core XT on the right hand side of it, there's a module for RGB connections. Unfortunately, with this case, I'm already using that with the light strips, so I end up having to use the lighting core. But if you happen to have spare spots on your Commander Pro or Commander Core, then it is an option that you could use. So now I'm just going to unbox the expansion kit, which mostly looks the same actually. It's the same panels, the same sort of logic. You have the pins on both sides, you have the little metal attachments, you have one powered lighting panel. Again, that requires SATA power. An important point of note is that the instructions tell you that you don't need both of the RGB connections. Although the cable's there, you don't actually need to use the one from the expansion kit, so that could be confusing and might cause alarm when you first get it out, but you don't need to worry because you don't need it. Now, one of the things that you will note is it's very flexible. There's a lot of bend in this system. You can install the lighting panels so that they're at a 90-degree angle, so that's worth noting, and I'll talk a bit more about that later on. Now, one of the solutions that I have for the USB header problem, because both of them are already filled up on this motherboard and this 5000T case that I have, is that I have this splitter that I bought separately, and I'll link to that in the description. This essentially allows you to plug two USB devices into it and then have a single connection that goes out from that into the motherboard. So obviously it means that you can plug, for example, the Commander Core or your CPU cooler into this, as well as the RGB node, and then plug that into your motherboard. And obviously you could potentially use two of these if you need to, so you could have four things plugged into two headers on your motherboard, and that will make life a bit easier. They're also relatively affordable and quite small, so they're not too hard. They don't take up much space in the case. This is just one option. I've used this a couple of times now. It's pretty handy. It has a sticky back plastic on it, and you can just take that off and install it. So you'll see that my cable management is shocking. Yes, you can pick holes in it, but I am running the lighting node just underneath the Commander Core XT here, and then I'm running the cables for it. Obviously the USB cable needs to go down to the bottom, but also the SATA connections. Don't forget that we need SATA power for both the lighting core and also for the two triangles that have the lighting on it, so the main ones. So you do need three lots of SATA connections, so it's important to ensure that you have that SATA power coming out of the power supply unit, which in itself is a bit of a pain, because if you've already set your system up, then you're adding these in, you might not have spare SATA power, so it is worth bearing in mind that you want to do that. And obviously more cables to run and another place to put the box. Now, if you're not using your SSDs, you could put them in the place of the trays there, that would be useful. But then run the cables down to the bottom and plug in the power. Obviously you need to make sure your PC's off for all this, and Corsair does note not to touch the pins if you do have it plugged in. You're rearranging things, so obviously don't kill yourself while installing these things, because that would be very silly and disappointing to be killed by RGB. Now for the USB splitter, I'm putting it down at the bottom just so it's tucked out of the way, and it is nice and small, so it's fairly easy to hide away and get out of the way, but it is also really convenient. So I've already got the lighting core plugged in there, but now I can plug in the other device, which is the Commander Core XT, and that actually just makes life a little bit easier in terms of the connections. And then obviously run it through to the front and plug it into the USB header on the bottom of the motherboard. You can see the other one has already got something connected to it, so I wouldn't have been able to connect all these devices. So now using quite a lot of power, because I have the Commander Core in there and also the pump head and these lights. There's obviously a lot of fans going in here. If you've watched the video on the 5000T, you'll know just how much effort went into this. I also did a live stream unboxing on setup of this system, if you want to watch that, where you see the whole thing in action. Now the thought comes into how you're going to set these up. They are magnetized, and there's ever so slight bit of magnetization on them, but that means obviously the best place to put them is on metal parts of your case, but also that you're going to need to avoid putting them near anything important. Obviously don't put them on drives or SSDs or anything that might get damaged. It's not a super strong magnet, it's only a little bit of it, but it will hold on to the side of the case around the metal near the PSU shroud, for example. and they really connect up together really easily. One thing that I found is that you can install it on plastic, but because it is magnetized and it's not really designed to sit on plastic, you can't do it on a vertical surface because it will just slide off, unfortunately. So using it on metal is the most logical thing to do unless they're going to be completely flat. Now you can see that I have both power points installed, one on the left back and one on the right back. Obviously you need to then run the cables to the back of the case in a way that's neat. So in an ideal world you want to try and get those panels as close to the back as possible, or to a point where you can run the cables through and out of the way. And then what I noted is that it is possible to install them at a 90-degree angle, but what I found here is actually there's problems with the connectors. What I've noticed since is that there are differences in the size of these little metal connectors that go between them, that you can use different ones. What I found was my solution is that I actually ended up putting two in here, but they are actually different sizes, and it notes that in the manual, so it is possible to do this. The other thing that you can do is you can stand them up as well. So in Corsair's demonstration, I actually got a couple of the panels to stand up like a little pyramid within the case. So play around with the design and work out how you're going to do it. The bonus of it obviously being magnetic rather than being held in place with stickers or anything else is that it's not permanently mounted, so it is possible to change the design if you want to reposition things and work out a new setup. You do need to bear in mind where you position the two powered triangles though, because they're the most important part of the process. They need to be far away from each other and in a good position where they'll power it sufficiently. But here you can see the design that I've come up with. Now obviously you need to work out sort of which angles they're going from, because they only have pins on two sides, not all three, so there are only sort of certain logics that you can go through. One of the things that I was struck by immediately, and will be hard to put across in video, is that these lights are surprisingly bright, and you will see from the following clips I've actually found that the triangles are brighter than the case fans. So you may well find the same thing. Even if I dim the lighting on the triangles, which is possible within iCue, they are still substantially brighter. Now obviously you also have access to all the same sort of effects that you'd normally get with Corsair peripherals. So there's lots of different colours that you can go through. You have the static colours, and you have all the rainbow effects, and you have the ones that just sort of cycle through the various triangles and move their way around your case. And because it also works with Corsair's lighting link system, you can set up and use that so that you can match up not only the triangles but also the triangles with the other lighting. So in this case, for example, the lighting strips and the fans as well, so there's lots of potential for making some nice effects in your case. I do feel, as I said, that these are very bright though, so you do have to do some adjustment. Also, the colour representation is a bit squiffy. So you can see that I've set them to static blue here at the moment, and actually they look a bit whiter. In reality, they're not quite as bad as that. The camera isn't perfect in the way it's picked it up. But you'll see as I do go through these different colour representations, I think because the lights are brighter in the triangles, they end up actually looking quite a bit different in terms of the colour representation versus what you're seeing on the fans. So there's quite a difference between them. But you can tweak the brightness in iCue, so it is worth playing around with that. I also think it's fairly easy to set up, relatively easy, as long as you have enough room at the back for your lighting node and obviously for the extra SATA connections. It is a nice RGB addition. Also, if you have no RGB lighting, so let's just say you have a case with no RGB fans in it, and you just want to throw these in, add them in as an extra addition to just add some hints and highlights of lighting effects, maybe add a bit of an accent to your case. And this is a pretty easy way to do it, because you only really require SATA power and that small control box, rather than having to worry about loads and loads of different cables. So a nice addition and nicely customizable too. I'll leave all the links in the description, as well as specification, links to purchase and other things, so you can find out more. But hopefully this has been an interesting insight. If you've not seen it already, check out my video on the Corsair 5000T case, because it is a very nice one indeed, with a lot of interesting highlights. This has been the Provoked Prawn. Let me know in the comments if you've got any questions. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, click subscribe, and come back for more in future. This has been the Provoked Prawn. Hope you found this video useful, interesting, hilarious, or otherwise. Take a look at these other videos that I think you might find interesting as well. And have a look at the description for links and other information you might find useful. Click that join button to see the benefits of being a member of my YouTube channel. And most importantly, have a great life.